Feiyan, show proper respect to His Highness, the Crown Prince. My father's stern voice resonated beside me, a familiar vibration of authority that always demanded obedience. I trailed behind him, slowly lifting my gaze. My eyes met the deep, unfathomable pools of the man before me. He, too, seemed to be studying me, his gaze lingering just a fraction longer than polite courtesy dictated. "This humble servant greets Your Highness, the Crown Prince," I murmured, adhering strictly to the prescribed etiquette. I took a few measured steps forward, bowed my head, and bent my knees in a perfect curtsy. A soft chuckle escaped his lips, a sound that sent an unexpected shiver down my spine. "Lady Lin, please, dispense with the formalities." "Rise," he said, offering a gesture of assistance. His fingers brushed against my arm, a fleeting, almost imperceptible touch. Yet, it sent a wave of tingling warmth through my entire body. Flustered, I quickly rose and retreated to my original position. While my father engaged him in conversation, I dared to steal another glance, a more thorough examination this time. He was breathtaking. He was just barely past the age of coming of age, his face possessing a sculpted beauty that seemed almost otherworldly, the kind that could steal one's very soul. His features were refined, yet held a hint of something untamed, a flicker of power beneath the surface. No, I chided myself, those were not the appropriate words to describe the Crown Prince. I abruptly lowered my head, my cheeks burning with a sudden, inexplicable shame. As he turned away, I distinctly felt his gaze linger on me. I heard a low laugh, and when I looked up again, he was already walking away, leaving me with only the impression of his retreating figure. I stood there, momentarily stunned. It seemed no language could adequately capture the essence of such a man as the Crown Prince. His name was Ju, the designated heir to the throne, the only son of the late Empress. His appearance and talents were unparalleled, a rare combination that made him the obvious choice. The Emperor and Empress had shared a deep and abiding love, a bond widely known and respected throughout the land. There was no reason for the Emperor not to favor such a son. The current Emperor was aging, and his sons were now grown men. Although I was but a woman, and therefore excluded from the intricacies of court politics, I was not entirely ignorant of them. The unspoken battles between the princes were a constant undercurrent, a subtle but relentless struggle for power. The court was subtly, yet definitively, divided, with factions forming around the Crown Prince and the Third Prince. My father, the esteemed general of the cavalry, was a staunch supporter of the Crown Prince. The favor bestowed upon the imperial concubines was invariably intertwined with the power dynamics of the court. The Empress had passed away 2 years prior, leaving Consort Qi, the mother of the Third Prince, as the Emperor's most favored consort. Consort Qi was the daughter of the powerful Grand Secretary, a man of considerable influence and wealth. This, naturally, posed a significant threat to the Crown Prince's position. He needed a Crown Princess with a powerful maternal family to bolster his standing. And I was precisely that woman. The Emperor valued the Crown Prince and held a certain fondness for me. Thus, the imperial edict was issued, decreeing our marriage. A propitious date was chosen, and preparations for the grand wedding commenced. The details of that day are now a blur in my memory. I only recall the sheer opulence, the overwhelming grandeur of the ceremony. The red silk stretched for 10 li, a spectacle that captivated the entire capital city. I had finally entered the Eastern Palace, the residence of the Crown Prince. After a flurry of intricate rituals, I sat quietly on the bed, my head covered by the traditional red veil, awaiting the Crown Prince's arrival. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. The waiting felt like an eternity. Finally, the door to the bridal chamber creaked open. I sensed someone approaching me slowly, their footsteps measured and deliberate. "You may all leave," he said, his voice a low, melodic murmur. "Yes, Your Highness," the attendants replied respectfully. I heard the rustling of their robes, the soft patting of their feet as they exited, and then the gentle closing of the door. The Crown Prince stood before me. I wondered if he was studying me, assessing his bride. I fretted inwardly. What did he look like today? Was he handsome? The thought struck me as absurd. When was the Crown Prince not handsome? The man before me let out another soft chuckle, as if he could read my very thoughts. Then, the red veil was lifted, revealing the world beyond the crimson curtain. I saw the Crown Prince's smiling eyes, his exquisitely handsome face framed by the candlelight. "This humble wife greets your highness, the crown prince," I stammered, my usual composure shattered. My movements were clumsy, my curtsy rushed. He reached out and steadied me, his grip firm and reassuring, unlike the fleeting touch earlier. His hand held mine, warm and strong. "Feiyan," he said softly, "no need for such formality." I was momentarily lost in the warmth of his gaze, the gentle pressure of his hand. He led me to sit beside him, his touch lingering, his voice a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. He spoke to me in gentle tones, his words like a whispered melody. I remember him saying, "Feiyan is the one I desire." From the moment I first saw Feiyan, I knew she was the only one I could ever choose as my crown princess. "Feiyan, you are exquisite today." The crown prince was a man of extraordinary tenderness and consideration. After our marriage, we were inseparable, our affection for each other a constant source of wonder and envy. The entire Eastern Palace whispered that the crown prince and crown princess were like celestial beings, a pair so perfectly matched that even the gods would be envious. Those days were so idyllic, so filled with joy, that I foolishly believed they would last forever. Gradually, however, the crown prince's demeanor shifted. He became more serious, more preoccupied. From whispers and rumors that reached even my sheltered ears, I learned that the emperor was gravely ill. The power struggle between the crown prince and the third prince had intensified, becoming a desperate, winner-takes-all contest. The emperor had entrusted the majority of the government affairs to the crown prince, a clear indication of his unwavering faith in his chosen heir. The crown prince was burdened with countless responsibilities, yet he handled them with remarkable skill and efficiency. He navigated the treacherous waters of court politics and military affairs with a deftness that belied his youth. The rumors were true. The third prince, driven by his insatiable lust for power, had finally succumbed to temptation. Supported by Consort Chi's father, the Grand Secretary, he had raised an army and rebelled. The third prince's fiefdom was located in Ingzhou. His uprising was sudden and unexpected, catching everyone off guard. He marched north, his army gathering strength as it advanced towards the capital. The third prince's forces were formidable, seemingly unstoppable. They swept aside any resistance, crushing the army sent by the emperor to intercept them. Within the imperial palace, Consort Chi's loyalists had already seized control. The third prince seemed to hold all the cards, pushing the crown prince into a desperate retreat. I did not know the crown prince's plans, but I trusted him implicitly. His brilliance in governance and strategy was unmatched, far surpassing the capabilities of the third prince. Surely, he could not be so easily defeated. The third prince's army breached the capital's defenses. The emperor had passed away some time before. Rumors circulated that the late emperor had left behind a final edict, naming the crown prince as his successor. Someone close to the third prince, adept at reading the emperor's intentions, surmised that the edict was hidden either within the imperial palace or, more likely, within the Eastern Palace. The third prince, ever impulsive, led his troops directly into the Eastern Palace. His advance was swift and brutal, meeting little resistance. The crown prince was absent, leaving me, the crown princess, to face the onslaught. "Crown princess, you must understand the current situation," one of the third prince's men said, his tone condescending. "The third prince is the rightful heir to the dragon throne. You would be wise to reveal the location of the edict and avoid unnecessary suffering." My hands were bound, rendering me helpless. I could only offer a cold, defiant laugh. What edict? If the third prince is truly the chosen one, why would he need a mere piece of paper? The man's expression hardened. "Can you not see how the tides have turned? The crown prince's cause is lost." "I am the mistress of this Eastern Palace," I declared, my voice unwavering. "Whether the crown prince lives or dies, I will not abandon my post. As for the object the third prince seeks, I know nothing of it. I have never seen it." The man beside me was about to continue his persuasion, but the third prince silenced him with a sharp look. The third prince approached me, his steps slow and deliberate. He stopped directly in front of me, a cruel smile playing on his lips. His right hand shot out, gripping my chin with brutal force. I felt as though the bones in my jaw were about to shatter. The pain was excruciating, a searing agony that radiated through my skull. "The esteemed eldest daughter of the Lin family," he sneered, his expression devoid of emotion, his grip tightening. "Helian Ju's mother, The empress who once reigned supreme over the inner palace, her family's men all died on the battlefield. When news of their demise reached the palace, the empress fell ill, consumed by grief. Her illness lingered for years, ultimately claiming her life. If not for those tragic events, Lady Lin, do you truly believe the crown prince would have chosen you? Would you still be the mistress of this eastern palace, the crown princess of the realm? I had always known the true reason why my father had singled me out to greet the crown prince during his visit to the Lin estate. I was the only legitimate daughter of the general of the cavalry. Even though my father had several daughters, I was different. I was born of his first wife, and from my earliest years, I had received far more affection and attention than my sisters. Therefore, my responsibilities were also far greater. Only a daughter of legitimate birth could offer the crown prince the necessary political advantage. I had always understood this, accepted it as my duty. If the crown prince held genuine affection for me, then what did the political machinations behind our union matter? Marriage is a matter dictated by parents and matchmakers, I retorted. How could this humble servant presume to understand the crown prince's intentions? Besides, the third prince's own consort is also a woman of the chief family. I dare ask, what are the third prince's true feelings for her? My words enraged him. He laughed, a harsh, mirthless sound. He drew his sword from its scabbard, pressing the cold steel against my neck. A slight increase in pressure, and my blood would surely spill. Are you afraid, crown princess? I cursed him silently. If he intended to kill me, he should do it swiftly, without this cruel taunting, this pointless question. I straightened my back, refusing to speak. I ask you, are you afraid? He roared, applying more pressure to the blade. I felt a sharp sting on my neck. I was certain I was bleeding. Only the crown prince may refer to himself as I said calmly. It is the third prince who is overstepping. Good. Very good indeed. The third prince's cold laughter echoed through the chamber. He nodded slowly. My fifth brother has indeed married a courageous, truly devoted crown princess. I knew he was furious, yet I remained silent, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a response. It is said that the crown prince and crown princess share a love so profound, so perfect, that even the gods would envy them, he continued, his voice dripping with venom. I am curious to see how the crown prince will react when he learns of the crown princess's demise. His tone had become increasingly menacing. I understood. He truly intended to kill me. I closed my eyes gently, but my back remained straight, unyielding. I wanted to die with dignity, to ensure that I brought no shame to my father, to the Eastern Palace, or to the crown prince. The cold steel of the blade pressed against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. But the expected pain did not come. A whooshing sound, like the wind itself, struck the blade, deflecting it from its course. The next moment, I was swept into a pair of strong arms. I opened my eyes, and there he was, the crown prince, his familiar face etched with concern and relief. I had no idea how the crown prince had communicated with my father, how he had managed to arrive so swiftly. All I knew was that the tables had turned. The crown prince had sprung a trap, capturing the third prince and consort Chi like rats in a cage. Their rebellion was crushed. No matter how much they protested, it was over. The late emperor was gone, and the nation could not remain without a ruler. With my father's unwavering support, the crown prince ascended the throne. He was indeed a man destined to become a wise and benevolent ruler. He acted swiftly and decisively. His first decree was the execution of the third prince and the annihilation of the chief family. Consort Chi was placed under house arrest. I never saw Consort Chi again, but I heard from the palace servants that she had gone mad, her once proud and haughty spirit broken. My father, naturally, became the emperor's most trusted advisor. And I, the former crown princess, became the empress, the mother of the nation. Even after becoming emperor, his affection for me did not diminish. If anything, it grew stronger. One day, he expressed his desire to take me to visit his mother's memorial. Apart from the customary visit to pay respects to the benevolent and virtuous empress after our wedding, I had not visited her memorial again. This time, it was his initiative. The emperor stood before the benevolent and virtuous empress's memorial tablet, holding my hand tightly. Feiyan is not only a good empress, he said, his voice filled with emotion, but also the woman my heart desires, the only woman I have ever truly loved. He said I was the woman he loved, the only woman he loved. Soon after his ascension, the ministers began to press him to choose concubines, citing the emptiness of the inner palace. This time, Hyeonju did not refuse. I had always understood that an emperor could not have only one empress. He would eventually take many concubines. As empress, I should not be consumed by jealousy over such matters. I tried to convince myself, to reason with my own emotions, but I failed miserably. It was the first time I had ever shown him any displeasure. I refused to see him. Everyone said it was merely a minor quarrel, a fleeting lover's spat. But I felt deeply uneasy. It was not simply a tantrum. However, my expressions of discontent did not yield the desired result. The daughters sent by the various ministers were accepted by Hyeonju without exception. Based on their family backgrounds, they were granted different ranks and titles. At first, he tried to coax me, visiting the Phoenix Palace daily, pleading with me to open the door. But as the number of beauties increased, he eventually stopped coming. The concubines continued to pay their respects to me each morning, their etiquette impeccable, their demeanor flawless. I sat on the throne of the Phoenix Palace, sipping a cup of tea. It tasted bitter, perhaps the leaves had been steeped for too long. A wave of irritation washed over me. I slammed the teacup down, the sharp sound echoing through the hall. The sudden noise startled the concubines, who had been engaged in polite conversation. They exchanged glances, their faces filled with apprehension. I realized what I had done, and I forced a smile. "I am not feeling well today," I said. "You may all leave." After they had departed, I reclined on a couch, lost in thought. My reverie was interrupted by my personal maidservant. "Your Majesty," she said, "Eunuch Wang, from the Emperor's side, is here." I knew I should not continue this childish behavior, but I could not bring myself to concede. "I will not see him," I declared stubbornly. "Your Majesty," the maidservant pleaded, stepping closer. "How long will you continue this quarrel with the Emperor? You clearly love him. Why cause both of yourselves such pain?" I closed my eyes, took a deep breath to calm myself, and then sighed wearily. "Let the eunuch enter," I relented. The maidservant's face lit up with relief. "Yes, Your Majesty." Eunuch Wang entered, his face etched with worry. He bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, the Emperor's stomach ailment has flared up again, and he refuses to take his medicine. Please, you must go and see him." My heart tightened with concern. Hyeonju had always suffered from a sensitive stomach. When it acted up, he was in considerable pain. Yet, this man, who feared nothing else, was terrified of the bitter herbal concoctions prescribed by the physicians. It always took considerable effort to persuade him to take his medicine. In the Eastern Palace, he would only drink the medicine if I personally administered it. "How long has the Emperor been suffering?" I asked. "He has been in pain for the past 2 days, Eunuch Wang replied, his face a mask of distress. "Insolence!" I exclaimed, my anger flaring. "How dare the imperial physicians allow the Emperor to suffer for so long?" "Your Majesty." Eunuch Wang looked utterly helpless. "There are plenty of physicians in the Imperial Academy, and no shortage of medicine. But the Emperor must agree to take it." I lowered my head, biting my lip. Seeing my hesitation, Eunuch Wang continued, "Your Majesty, no one in this palace holds a higher place in the Emperor's heart than you. Yesterday, Consort Min went to see the Emperor, hoping to persuade him to take his medicine. But before she could even speak, the Emperor sent her away. I am at my wit's end, Your Majesty. That is why I have come to you. The carriage is waiting outside." My resolve softened. I waved my hand dismissively. "Very well. To the Shangchen Palace." I arrived at the Shangchen Palace, carrying a bowl of freshly brewed medicine. Hyeonju had dismissed all the attendants. He lay on the bed, his eyes closed. As I approached, I noticed his pale complexion, his brow furrowed in pain. "Did I not say that no one was to enter?" he grumbled, his voice weak and strained. "This humble servant greets Your Majesty," I said, bowing respectfully. Hearing my voice, Hyeonju's body stiffened. He opened his eyes. "Feiyan?" he murmured, reaching out to me. I sat beside him on the bed, keeping my head lowered. "The Emperor's health is paramount. You must take your medicine." I held the bowl to his lips. "Please, Your Majesty, drink." "Feiyan." His voice was laced with disappointment. "Have you missed me, Feiyan?" "I have missed you dearly. You refuse to see me, and, even now, you will not look at me." A wave of sorrow washed over me, but I could not bring myself to soften my tone. The Emperor has his beauties to keep him company. Why would he miss this humble servant? I am clearly not clever or charming enough to please your majesty. Feiyan. He sighed wearily, drawing me into his embrace. Look at me, Feiyan. His voice was filled with a deep, abiding sadness. If I were not born into the imperial family, I would wish for only you, to live a simple life with you, to have our own children, to be together for eternity, just the two of us. I lifted my head, meeting his gaze. His eyes were filled with a profound sense of resignation, a hint of despair. I should understand your majesty's burdens. Feiyan, you need only know that my heart belongs to you, and to you alone. Is that enough? Hyeonju whispered, his voice a gentle caress. Yes, I replied, even though my heart ached with a bittersweet sorrow. What else could I do? I knew I had to learn to be tolerant, to be magnanimous, to endure the loneliness. Feiyan is the best, Hyeonju said, a faint smile returning to his lips. This medicine was brewed by my own hands. Will the emperor not drink it? I held the bowl closer to him. He frowned slightly, pulling me closer, his voice taking on a playful, almost childish tone. If Feiyan will feed me, then I will drink. After that incident, our Cold War ended. My parents, far away from the palace, learned of our quarrel. They sent a letter, urging me to remember my duty as Empress, to be a virtuous and supportive consort, not a jealous woman. I was reluctant, but I had no choice but to comply. The next day, when the concubines came to pay their respects, Consort Lu, who had been speaking for only a few minutes, suddenly appeared pale and nauseous. I was alarmed, immediately summoning the imperial physician. The examination revealed that Consort Lu was not ill, but pregnant. She was 3 months along. Hyeonju rushed to her side, treating her as though she were a fragile treasure, fearful that she might stumble or fall. I had never seen him so happy, so utterly consumed by tenderness. He had never treated me with such delicate care. Motherhood elevated one's status. Even before the child was born, Consort Lu was elevated to the rank of noble consort. Hyeonju visited her constantly, showering her with attention. For a time, she eclipsed everyone else, even me, the Empress. I sat in my palace one day, calculating the numbers. Noble Consort Lu had entered the palace a year ago, at the age of 16. I had been with the emperor since his days in the Eastern Palace, and I was now 18. Yet, I had no news of a pregnancy. I smiled bitterly. I admit, I envied Noble Consort Lu. So young, already a noble consort, and soon to have a child. Even if she were to lose the emperor's favor one day, she would still have her child, a source of comfort and companionship in the long, lonely nights. I was startled by my own thoughts. I was only 18. Why was I already contemplating what would happen if I lost the emperor's affection? I was still young, even among the numerous concubines in the palace. Yet, I was behaving like a worried old woman, fretting about a future where I had fallen from grace. I scoffed at my own foolishness. For some reason, that night, Hyeonju did not visit Noble Consort Lu. He came to me instead. His expression was gentle, tinged with a hint of apology. Feiyan, he said, I have neglected you these past few days. I smiled faintly, shaking my head. Noble Consort Lu is carrying a child. She must be experiencing great discomfort. It is only natural that the emperor should visit her often. That night, we made love. He was as tender as he had always been. In a moment of vulnerability, I whispered, Your Majesty, I, too, desire a child of our own. He stiffened, and the passion between us seemed to evaporate instantly. He released me, then embraced me again, his voice guarded, almost seductive. Why do you desire a child, Feiyan? You and I, we do not need a child to bind us together. I did not understand the meaning behind his words at the time. I only waited for the birth of Noble Consort Lu's son, and for the devastating news of the Lin family's exile. I did not understand. My father had always been loyal to the emperor, yet he was accused of treason, a crime punishable by death. The emperor, in his fury, ordered the Lin family to be banished to a remote and desolate region. And I did not know what Hyeonju would do next. For several days, the capital was drenched in torrential rain. I knelt outside the Shangchen Palace for 2 days. At first, I still had the strength to speak, to plead for my father's life. But as the rain beat down upon me, it felt like 1,000 weights, crushing me into silence. Yet, the door remained closed. Eunuch Wang tried to persuade me to return to my palace, but I ignored him. I did not know who else to turn to, Who else could possibly help me, other than the supreme ruler who resided within the Shangchen Palace? But even after I collapsed from exhaustion, I did not receive a single word of explanation or comfort from Hyeonju. When I regained consciousness, I was lying in my bed in the Phoenix Palace. My maidservants surrounded me, their faces etched with worry. The imperial physician examined me, the same young physician who had always tended to me. "Your Majesty has suffered from exposure to the cold," he said. "I will prescribe some medicine. Please take it regularly. I will examine you daily. You must rest and avoid any strenuous activity, or you risk further damage to your health." My gaze swept across the room, searching for the one person I longed to see. "Where is the Emperor?" I asked, my voice weak and trembling. The joy that had flickered in my maidservant's eyes when I awoke vanished instantly. My heart sank. Pinger stepped forward, offering me a bowl of warm ginger soup. Her voice was choked with emotion. "Your Majesty, please do not dwell on such matters. Your health is paramount. You must not mistreat yourself in this way." I swallowed a mouthful of the ginger soup, but it did nothing to warm me. Tears streamed down my face, falling into the soup, creating tiny ripples. Pinger embraced me, and my sobs grew louder. I could no longer swallow the soup. "I want my father. I want my mother," I cried. I remained in this state of numb despair for several days. He did not come to the Phoenix Palace to see me. I did not know if he was laughing and joking with Consort Min, or playing with noble Consort Lu's newborn child, or strolling through the imperial gardens with some other favored concubine. But I knew that he had not come to see me. Perhaps he did not want to see me. It was then that I realized that even an empress was just another one of the countless wretched women in this world. Without family, without the emperor's love, she was nothing. I do not know how many days passed, perhaps 7 or 8. Finally, Hyeonju deigned to see me. He wore his bright yellow dragon robe, embroidered with cloud patterns, a symbol of his supreme authority. I, on the other hand, was pale and gaunt, a shadow of my former self. I struggled to perform a weak curtsy. "This humble servant greets your Majesty." Hyeonju made no move to acknowledge my greeting. He stood there, looking down at me, his expression cold and distant. Finally, he sat down, but he did not bid me rise. "How have you become so thin in such a short time, Empress?" His voice was devoid of warmth, a tone I had never heard him use before. A wave of dizziness washed over me. The memory of his past tenderness was still fresh, a painful contrast to his present coldness. "Your Majesty." My heart ached. Ignoring the icy glint in his eyes, I could not contain my tears. "My father is innocent of any treasonous intent. I implore your Majesty to see reason." Hyeonju let out a cold laugh. "Is he truly innocent? I believe he has become far too bold." I was stunned, tears still streaming down my face. I stared at him, searching his eyes for a flicker of the love he had once professed. But I found nothing. I knelt on the floor, my body trembling. Hyeonju stood before me, his voice raining down from above. "Feiyan, your father has been living a life of far too much power and influence. He helped me ascend the throne, he is my right-hand man, his daughter is my empress." "Oh, it is all so very good, is it not?" He laughed again, a chilling, mocking sound. The very things my father had once been most proud of had now become the evidence of his alleged crimes. "I despise his authority, his arrogance, his very presence. And I am utterly weary of pretending to be so deeply in love with you." His words were like daggers, piercing my heart. He lowered his head, looking at me with undisguised contempt. I finally realized how utterly false his past expressions of love had been. I could not bear to recall his embraces, his passionate kisses. What had he been thinking all along? He had woven a web of lies, deceiving the entire world. Everyone believed that the Emperor and Empress shared a deep and abiding love. My parents believed he treated me with the utmost affection. Even I, myself, had believed that I held a special place in his heart. But now I finally understood. Who did he love? No one but himself. He probably loved no one, only the power he held, guarding the rivers and mountains of the Hellyan clan. But my father had been so loyal in assisting him, protecting this land for him. In an instant, I also understood why he had said that to me that night. "Between you and me, there is no need for a child to maintain our relationship." Because there had never been any affection to maintain, and he had even taken great pains to prevent me from conceiving. I grasped a corner of Hyeonju's robe, raised my head, and looked at him humbly. Even if your majesty despises this humble servant, my family has never done anything to betray your majesty. I can give up being empress, but please, your majesty, consider my parents' advanced age and spare their lives. With that, I knocked my head again and again, heavily, on the cold floor. My forehead was broken, bleeding, but it did not soften his heart. I always believe in finishing what I start. Think of the fate of my third brother and the Chi family. Only then did I recall that he also had a violent side. That was towards the deceased third prince and the now insane consort Chi's family. That was the ruthlessness of an emperor. And now, that ruthlessness had finally descended upon me. Actually, whether you are my empress or not is not a major issue. Ultimately, the reason you kneel before me today, weeping and begging, is simply because you are the eldest legitimate daughter of the Lin family. I could have left you alone, but because you are a Lin, I have come to despise you. Since you are already empress, I will not easily depose you, but... I saw Hyeonju raise his head, and without the slightest hesitation, he continued, the empress is ill. She should rest well in the Phoenix Palace. Do not wander around the palace, lest you spread your illness to others. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to leave without any remorse. I knelt there, dazed and stunned, then suddenly turned my head to look at him, a bitter smile on my face. Your Majesty is truly worthy of being the ruler of a nation, able to bend and stretch as needed. But this humble servant still cannot resist. Asking, after all these years of acting, has your Majesty truly never felt even a shred of genuine affection for this humble servant? I should have known his answer, and my face was already devoid of any expression. Hyeonju turned around and gave me a cold sneer. Naturally, not a single shred of genuine affection. With that, he turned and left the Phoenix Palace, without any lingering attachment. It was Pinger who rushed into the bedchamber, her eyes red-rimmed, and helped me onto the bed. I had never knelt for so long since I was born, and my knees felt like they were being bitten by thousands of ants, the pain unbearable. But I paid no attention to the swelling in my knees. I sat on the bed, forcing a difficult smile. The following days were the most difficult of my life. I sat in front of the bronze mirror, my face pale, dressed in my empress robes, listening impassively as the young eunuch trembled and said, Empress, the entire Lin family, young and old, has been executed. I was combing my hair when the young eunuch reported the news. Apart from a few strands of hair falling out at that moment, I showed no other reaction. I understand. You may leave. The hairpin I was about to insert into my bun was clutched in my hand. I stood up, but after taking only 2 steps, my legs gave way and I collapsed to the floor. When I regained consciousness, all the servants of the Phoenix Palace were gathered around me, their eyes red, but they dared not speak a word. I knew my body was already failing. To prevent me from becoming pregnant, Hyeonju had used who knows how many potent drugs, and my body was severely depleted. Don't cry. I tried my best to smile, speaking to my maids. Even if I am to leave, I want to leave in peace. I am merely going to see my father and mother. Your Majesty. Pinger sobbed, interrupting me. Your Majesty, don't say such inauspicious things. Your Majesty will recover. I smiled and closed my eyes, saying nothing. The sunlight that day was exceptionally bright. I forced myself to dismiss all the attendants and leaned against the window, gazing at the chrysanthemums blooming in the courtyard. Hyeonju had ordered them planted for me. I laughed mockingly. Turning my head, I looked at the bowl of black medicinal soup beside me. After staring at it for a long time, I picked up the bowl and drank it all in one gulp. If I could live, I would make Hyeonju wish he were dead. In the second year of Jing'an, the Empress of the Phoenix Palace fell gravely ill, and within a month, she passed away. What was perplexing was that the Emperor and Empress had always been known for their deep affection, but after the Empress's death, the Jingyun Emperor only conducted a perfunctory funeral. Some said that the Jingyun Emperor blamed the Empress for the Lin family's actions. Others said that their deep love was nothing more than a foolish dream. The truth of the matter remained unknown. People bustled around me. I sat in front of the bronze mirror as if I were oblivious, picking up the rouge and gently applying it to my lips. Feiyan, are you ready? I was just about to pin the last hairpin in my hair, and I looked up at the girl, smiling slightly. I'm coming. The Emperor's birthday was always a grand affair. The in charge of teaching had repeatedly emphasized for days that we must not make any mistakes in front of the Emperor, or we would lose our heads. I slowly entered the hall with the other dancers, and even with my eyes lowered, I could sense the majesty of the Son of Heaven from above. The music began. I moved with the other dancers, gracefully stepping to the rhythm. A phoenix hairpin holds up the hair, the lithe waist even more tender. Lightly moving lotus steps, the Han Palace's flying swallows old style. Hasten the drum. To play liangzhou, a partridge flies up from a spring silk sleeve. Brocade wrapped around the head, Lu Lang mistakenly takes it for a willow in the wind. A colorful silk ribbon was lowered from above. I hooked my lips in a smile, grasped the ribbon tightly with my right hand, and then spun my body in the air. My wide sleeves, flowing with color, reflected in every corner of the hall, and finally, I landed steadily in my original position, surrounded by the other dancers. "We wish His Majesty a long life," I said in a clear voice, bending my knees. The nobles were initially silent, and then a sound came from my right. "Well done. Truly spectacular." I followed the sound and quietly looked up. The man was Prince Shin, the Emperor's younger brother. This dance could only be from heaven. Even though I, this prince, have seen many dancers over the years, this is the first time I have seen a dancer like a fairy. The crowd echoed his sentiments. Prince Shin was a notoriously prince. If even Prince Shin praised a humble girl like this, then the dance must have been extraordinary. I lowered my head and said nothing. Prince Shin's praise was not what I wanted. After kneeling for a while, my knees began to ache. I heard a clear, cold voice from the front. "You, raise your head." I obeyed, raising my head and meeting the eyes of the man wearing the bright yellow dragon robe embroidered with clouds. There was a hint of interest in his expression. He waved his hand at me. "Come forward." "Yes," I replied. I crossed my hands in front of my lower abdomen and walked slowly towards him, step by step. "This servant greets your majesty," I said, kneeling before him in a full bow. He helped me up and looked me up and down for a moment. "What is your name and how old are you?" I lowered my eyelids and answered him properly. "This servant's humble name is Song Jiawen, and I am 19 years old." I lowered my head, unable to see his expression, but I clearly felt him pause for a moment before saying, "Not bad. I like you very much. You will stay in the palace and become a noble lady, residing in the Chushio Palace." I took a step back and bowed deeply. "This servant thanks your majesty." I was no longer a lowly dancer in the Huin Pavilion. I had transformed into noble lady Song of the Chushio Palace, taking up residence there. A group of servants knelt before me, greeting me. I asked the head maidservant her name, and she said it was Pinger. The emperor seemed to truly like me. He came to the Chushio Palace on the very first day of my arrival. For the next month, he came to the Chushio Palace continuously. He held me, his expression becoming somewhat hazy. The Chushio Palace was filled with fragrance all night, but it could not completely conceal the intimacy within. This was already the second month of the emperor visiting me. 3 days ago, the emperor exceptionally promoted me to noble consort. Rumors were already spreading outside, and many concubines were dissatisfied, but I paid no attention. After our passionate embrace, we settled down to sleep. I told him that I was accustomed to keeping a lamp lit in my bedroom, and he agreed. The red candle flickered, and I slowly moved Helian Ju's arm from my body. He did not stir. I got out of bed, my body still somewhat sore. I frowned and walked to the dressing table. I adjusted the pendant around my neck in the bronze mirror and carefully opened the makeup box beside me. Beneath the jewelry, a letter lay quietly. I tore open the envelope without expression. Inside was only a piece of paper with a simple sentence. "Meet me at Qingliang Terrace at noon tomorrow." For the past 2 days, the emperor had felt dizzy and unwell when he woke up in the morning. I served him while he dressed, offering gentle comfort. "Perhaps your majesty is too tired from your official duties," I said softly, turning to pick up a cup of freshly brewed calming tea and offering it to him. "Your majesty, have some tea to soothe your throat." He took the tea without hesitation and drank it. He gently kissed my forehead before going to court. I watched him leave with a gentle expression, and only when his figure completely disappeared from the doorway did I finally release the breath I had been holding. With the inner palace without a ruler, the concubines were spared the morning ritual of paying respects to the central palace, giving me ample time. Pinger was attentive to me, but always kept a certain distance. Therefore, I asked the emperor for the dancer Mian from the Huin Pavilion to be my personal maidservant. I had always been close to her, and it would make things easier. After Mion helped me with my morning toilette, I asked her to prepare some snacks and send them to the Changhua Palace. There were not many princes in the palace and only one without a mother. The first prince was noble consort Rong's child, 4 years old. Unfortunately, when the first prince was 2, noble consort Rong died of a sudden illness. I knew that to solidify my position in the inner palace, I needed a child. Therefore, my kindness towards the first prince was not only known to him, but also displayed in front of the emperor. In this way, I successfully had the first prince adopted as my own. Children are always the most innocent. They are close to whoever is kind to them. To be honest, apart from wanting a pillar of support, I also genuinely liked the first prince. In the inner palace, a child's affection for you is far more reliable than an emperor's love. However, I scoffed. Despite this, I wanted both a child as a pillar of support and for Helianju to be unable to live without me. I put down the wooden comb, ordered someone to throw out the ashes in the incense burner, took off the pendant from my neck, and then ordered someone to prepare a medicinal bath, preparing to soak thoroughly. Noon arrived quickly. I arrived at Qingliang Terrace according to the information on the note. To my surprise, the other person arrived before me. He was dressed in black, standing with his back to me. I walked up to him step by step. He naturally heard the movement and turned around. As I expected, he was wearing a mask. "Where's my item?" My voice was unwavering, looking directly into his eyes. The man smiled and then took out an object from his pocket. "Use it sparingly." "I can't wait," I sneered. "I can't wait to see him groveling like a dog, begging for my mercy." "Aren't you looking forward to the day I wear the dragon robe?" The man took a step forward, asking with a hint of playfulness in his voice. "Of course," I said, tilting my head slightly, meeting his teasing gaze. We agreed. After the deed is done, the throne is yours, and he is mine to dispose of. As night approached, incense was lit again in the Chushio Palace. I changed my clothes and put the pendant that had been placed on the dressing table back around my neck. Then I sat down at the table, my fingers gently brushing over the zither, lightly plucking the strings. Would Helianju come tonight? He definitely would. After an unknown amount of time, I'd heard steady footsteps approaching me, stopping a short distance away. He didn't speak, seemingly observing me. I also remained silent. He lowered his voice and called out, "Feiyan." At the same time, the sound of the zither stopped abruptly. I raised my head and looked at the person in front of me. Who else could it be but Helianju? "Your Majesty," I said with a smile. He seemed to be in a daze, as if his soul had returned to his body. He took a deep breath, then exhaled, a gentle expression appearing on his face. He took my hand and called out softly, "Zhaoen." Zhaoyen's zither playing is exquisite. I wonder if I may have the pleasure of hearing another piece. I smiled and said, "My zither is not something to be heard on demand." The emperor was not annoyed. He bent down and lifted me horizontally, although his movements were somewhat stiff. He gently placed me on the bed and sat beside me, looking at me intently. Suddenly, a hint of sadness appeared in his eyes. "Zhaoen, only you can make me love without reservation." I didn't speak. I lowered my eyelids and laughed softly. Then, my arms, like lotus roots, wrapped around Helianju's neck, pulling his body down, and our lips met. His breathing instantly became ragged, and his eyes became hazy. I sneered inwardly and released my arms from around him. "Do you dare to abandon your harem for me?" "If it is for Zhaoen, I am willing," he said, holding me, almost impatient. I pushed him away fiercely. Before he could react, I leaned close to his ear and said, with a hint of seduction, "You must listen to me. You have to listen to me, understand?" Helianju looked at me, his eyes filled with an unprecedented level of confusion and bewilderment. I curled my lips. Seeing the emperor, usually revered by all, so helpless before me, almost like a dog unable to live without me, made me incredibly happy. I wanted to laugh out loud. This was Helianju. "Zhao!" He still wanted to say my name. But I turned my back to him and said coldly, "I told you, if you love me, you must listen to me. Go to sleep now, or I will be angry." I clearly heard him take several deep breaths, but in the end, he still forced himself to be gentle with me. "All right, I will do whatever Zhaoen tells me to do, and I will not do anything Zhaoen does not want me to do." He was probably extremely tired, and he fell asleep shortly after. I turned over and looked at his sleeping features. I had to admit, he was truly a rare beauty. My fingers traced his eyebrows, eyes, nose, and mouth, finally stopping at his neck. I wanted to strangle him. No, I shook my head, smiling sarcastically. That would be too easy for him. Hyeonju slept soundly, so deeply that he did not notice my movements at all. Before long, he would be completely unable to live without me. He would be unable to handle government affairs. From a wise ruler to a foolish tyrant, it wouldn't be difficult. I subconsciously touched the necklace around my neck. This was my trump card. I sent a carrier pigeon with a letter to the outside world. Success is not far away. Prepare immediately. Everything was progressing as I had planned. Hyeonju's dizziness in the mornings became increasingly frequent. After a moment of glee, I comforted him. Your Majesty is busy with government affairs. Perhaps you should skip the morning court? At first, he could still refuse, so I ordered the incense in the hall to be burned even more, and I soaked every inch of my clothes in its fragrance. He gradually, little by little, became more and more addicted. The spring night is short, the sun rises high. From this time on, the emperor does not attend morning court. Hyeonju held me. I gently pushed his arm away and turned to press him down. Does your Majesty have any genuine affection for this humble servant? Hyeonju's eyes had long since lost their former clarity. He held me, forcing the last bit of light in his eyes. Throughout the entire palace, only Zhaoen can make me feel at ease and love. I turned my face away, sneering where he couldn't see, and then pressed my face against his chest, teasing, "This humble servant can truly hear your Majesty's heart. Your Majesty, the position of Empress is vacant. Why not choose a new Empress?" He stiffened, lowered his head slightly, and looked at me. I dare say that was the clearest his eyes had been in days. He looked at me for a long time, then murmured, I cannot choose a new Empress. I promised her the position of Empress long ago." He was a little agitated, and his mind was not very clear. I gritted my teeth and gently comforted him. He fell into a deep sleep. I got up, ordered someone to bring a basin of hot water, and sat in front of the bronze mirror, washing my hands over and over again, wanting to cleanse them of all the filth they had touched. I almost gritted my teeth to pieces. Hyeonju, are you pretending to be deeply in love with the late Empress for someone to see? Feiyan was dead, and he kept the position of Empress vacant, refusing to choose a new one to show his deep affection and mourning. Then why didn't he treat her well when she was alive? Why did he drive her to her death? I might never understand. And I didn't want to understand his cruel imperial tactics. I only knew that he had killed Feiyan's family, and he had to pay with his life. A few days ago, that person had already sent news. Everything was ready, and they could attack the capital any day, changing the ownership of the rivers and mountains. I thought that was very good. The emperor indulged in revelry every night and had long since lost the will and the ability to manage the tedious affairs of government. I coaxed him, deceived him, and with a single decree, Hyeonju made me noble consort, granting me temporary control of the Phoenix Seal. Although I did not have the title of Empress, I held the equivalent power. For me, that was already enough. As the favored concubine, everyone in the palace assessed the situation and bowed their heads to me, obeying my every command. Hyeonju's health deteriorated further, so I ordered people to take good care of him, not allowing him to leave the bedchamber all day. Zhaoen, don't go. Hyeonju leaned against the headboard, his face pale. The once was long gone. I smiled and sat beside him, taking the medicine bowl from the maidservant, scooping up a spoonful of the dark, bitter concoction and bringing it to his lips. Hyeonju obediently opened his mouth and drank, frowning slightly at the bitterness of the medicine. He was afraid of bitterness, I had always known that. Your Majesty is unwell, and the first prince is still young. Since this humble servant is temporarily in charge of the Phoenix Seal, I must take on this responsibility. Fortunately, your Majesty has a good brother in Prince Shin, a loyal subject of the nation, who reports to me daily on the affairs of the court. Otherwise, I truly would not know what to do, I said softly. Hyeonju took another sip of the medicine and said to me with affection, "It is hard work for Zhaoen." I smiled and lowered my head. The medicine in the bowl was almost gone. I handed the bowl to a nearby servant, took out a handkerchief and gently wiped Hyeonju's mouth, holding his hand. Your Majesty, Prince Shin has been waiting for a long time. Your Majesty should prioritize the affairs of the nation. This humble servant will go and discuss national matters with Prince Shin and will return to accompany your majesty shortly. I coaxed him like this, and Hyeonju reluctantly let go of my hand. In the changing hall, today's memorials to be reviewed were placed. I opened the first one, and it was a criticism of my recent interference in government affairs. I sneered. A woman interfering in government affairs was already controversial. Most of the ministers in the court were initially opposed, but since I had made up my mind, how could I retreat because of criticism? Prince Shin supported me all the way, working with me to eliminate dissidents in the court. I originally thought that killing the chicken to scare the monkeys would make the monkeys understand what to do, but it seemed they still hadn't learned their lesson. I handed the memorial to Prince Shin and said, "This person is so insensitive." Prince Shin glanced at it lightly and said with a smile, "Why should Empress be angry? Since the person is disobedient, there is no use keeping him. This subject will take care of it for you." I put down the memorial and opened another one, smiling and lowering my head. "Empress need not worry. The world will soon be yours. What do you have to fear?" Prince Shin said with a smile. I put down the memorial I was reading, raised my head, and met Prince Shin's smiling eyes. Prince Shin's words seemed to suggest that he truly intends to support me as emperor. "If Empress wishes, this subject will do his best," Prince Shin said with a smile, without hesitation. Prince Shin was not a man who longed for imperial power. He, like me, simply wanted revenge. Hyeonju's mother, as empress, was virtuous and wise all her life, but she harmed only one person, and that was Prince Shin's mother. The world said that the late emperor and the late empress had a deep and abiding love, a divine couple, but perhaps the world did not know that the late empress was once out of favor because of Prince Shin's mother. Prince Shin's mother, the late emperor's consort Qing, was not of high birth, but she was stunningly beautiful. Although the empress was already a great beauty, her noble birth gave her a certain calmness and restraint. Consort Qing was different. She was enchanting, and the late emperor was so captivated by her that he even forgot his beloved wife. The empress gradually developed resentment towards consort Qing. A frame-up, a bowl of poison, sent consort Qing away. As they say, the sins of the mother are visited upon the son. That was probably the case. Prince Shin's years of lying low had finally paid off, and he did not disappoint me. In the 3rd month of my interference in government affairs, Prince Shin rebelled. Hyeonju had no strength to resist at this point, watching helplessly as his magnificent palace was reduced to ruins. He had not left my Chushio palace for a long time. Every part of the palace was dilapidated, except for my Chushio palace, which still maintained its original appearance. Hyeonju leaned against the headboard, perhaps even moving was difficult for him. I wore my noble consort robes and walked into the Chushio palace step by step, carrying a medicine bowl. Hearing the sound, Hyeonju raised his head. "Your Majesty," I said with a smile, bowing to Hyeonju. "May your Majesty be well." Hyeonju stared at me intently. After a long time, he raised his left hand and pointed his index finger at me. I smiled, placed the medicine bowl aside, and slowly peeled off the fake face covering my own in front of the bronze mirror, revealing my true appearance. "Your Majesty, don't get angry. Your body can no longer tolerate anger. Lin. Feiyan." He closed his eyes tightly, calling out my name, seemingly in sorrow and resignation. "It is this humble servant." I turned my head and smiled at him. "What is wrong, Your Majesty? Didn't Your Majesty tell me before that the position of Empress was vacant because of Feiyan?" "Your Majesty did not choose a new Empress for Feiyan's sake," such a display of deep affection. "This humble servant truly does not know which of Your Majesty's words are true and which are false." Hyeonju closed his eyes, a tear rolling down his cheek. He was still relatively young, but at this moment, he looked withered and old. I picked up the medicine bowl, scooped up a spoonful of medicine, blew on it gently, and brought it to his lips, comforting him. "Your Majesty, do not be too sorrowful. Drink the medicine and go to sleep." Hyeonju suddenly opened his eyes, tightly clenching his teeth, refusing to drink the medicine I offered. I was originally very patient and wanted to persuade him, but I suddenly changed my mind. I threw the spoon heavily into the medicine bowl, the soup splashing a small ripple. I held the bowl with my left hand and took a golden hairpin from my hair with my right hand, stabbing it fiercely into his palm. Blood gushed out instantly, and Hyeonju groaned, his face turning even paler. Seeing his painful expression, I suddenly felt incredibly gratified. Does your majesty still think he is the supreme ruler on the throne? I raised my voice. Wake up. Everything you had is gone. The world has changed. I sneered and called out to the outside of the hall, come in. Several guards ran in. Make sure His Majesty drinks this bowl of medicine, I ordered them. Yes, the guards replied. I didn't watch how they forced the medicine down, but I imagine the scene must have been quite a sight. Hyeonju must have been utterly humiliated, closer to death, and a painful death at that. I stood outside the hall, looking up at the blue sky. Father, mother, did you see? I have avenged you. The rebellion in the court gradually came to an end. Prince Shin became the new emperor, and no one knew where the former emperor was. He was chained up in my Chushio palace, and I gave him a bowl of medicine every day. At first, he still refused to drink, and I didn't understand him. He had been so willing to drink at the beginning. If he didn't drink, I would use pain to make him obey, just as he had once caused me pain. Gradually, he became like a puppet, letting me manipulate him, letting me play with him. He was like a dying dog, wagging his tail at me, begging for me. But he did not survive the second spring. As he lay dying, I caught the hatred in his eyes towards me. I couldn't bear to look. I gave him a knife to end his suffering. He died, completely and utterly. I ordered him to be buried hastily, just as he had hastily buried my parents. I laughed heartily. I had finally taken revenge. The resentment in my heart, after all these years, I had finally quelled it. But after that, I occasionally thought of that tiny bit of affection I had for him at the very beginning. It seemed insignificant now, but I still occasionally remembered it. I truly did remember it. Whether I loved him or not, it all ultimately came down to hate. Whether I hated him or not, it all ultimately came down to nothingness. And in this world, there was no longer the Hyeonju of the past, nor was there the Lin Feiyan of the past. The end.